But it's just a discussion. I know nothing about crayfish or crawdads. Like that monster you've got over your shoulder there. I assume you had that stuffed.
Yeah. We actually have a video on how to taxidermy crawfish on our YouTube channel.
Okay, so let me, and also I'm going to make a note as we go along. So I've got to ask about taxidermy for freaking crawdads.
Oh man, I could talk all day long. We don't want to have a 3-hour podcast, right?
Okay, so we'll go ahead and formally get started then. So Mike, where did you grow up, and were you always outdoors playing around outside?
I grew up in Bend, Oregon, and I did grow up outdoors. I grew up hunting and fishing since I was knee-high to a grasshopper. Always loved the outdoors. The outdoors was really special to me. I found a lot of peace and tranquility. Loved catching fish, going hunting with my dad. Bend, Oregon is where I grew up, and I have a lot of good memories.
Why does Bend, Oregon stand out to me for some reason? What part of Oregon is that in? Is it on the coast?
It is in Central Oregon, and Mount Bachelor is there. They actually held Olympics there at one time. It's now a resort town. When I grew up, it was a little sleepy town with one road and a beautiful river called the Deschutes River going through it. Now it's more of like a really busy resort type area.
And you said your dad was the one that got you outdoors. Did you guys do a lot of hunting and fishing, I assume?
We did a ton of hunting and fishing. I was one of 3 kids. I was the only boy in the family, and my dad, he just took me under his wing, and he loved to fish. He grew up in Helena, Montana, and he grew up loving to fish, and so he was carting me with him as long as I can remember.
Did he take your sisters out with you too?
They didn't like to go out so much. They were more like kind of stay-at-home girls. So I was always wanting to get my hands dirty and get in the water, and so he took me out mostly. And we all went camping quite a bit, but when we went camping, they stayed in camp, and my dad and I'd go fishing.
So you spent your childhood kind of fishing, like what I would consider probably the more traditional fishing, trout, other sport fish, right? And then,
kind of, in the Deschutes River, I found out that there were crawfish, and I would go down there, and it was kind of fun because I'd put some meat on a string and throw it out, and I'd see these crawfish come up from underneath, and they'd grab on, and I'd bring them in, and I'd net them. And when I was a little kid, I just thought that was pretty exciting.
Oh yeah, that's super fun. The only way we ever were able to catch them was flipping over rocks and trying to grab them behind the pincher so you didn't get the crap pinched out of you.
Yeah, for sure. That's one good way to catch them.
Not for me. I'm not good at it. They're fast, and I'm scared of them. I don't get pinched.
Well, there's a better way to do it, and we'll get to that later.
Perfect. So when did you transition from maybe being just like throwing a piece of meat out on a string and grabbing one to like, okay, I can take out pots and actually catch these things in mass?
Well, it's kind of an interesting story, and it was kind of funny. I'll say something. Crawfishing kind of chose me. I didn't really choose crawfishing, and I'll kind of tell you just a brief description of what happened in my life. I didn't intend or go out to go crazy on wild crawfish. It just happened. When I was a kid, I started catching a few. My dad thought that was pretty neat, and he saw I was interested, and so he said, "Hey, you know what? Let's go crawfishing. There's this reservoir called Wickiup Reservoir that's supposed to have a bunch of crawfish in it in Oregon." And so I'm like, "Well, how do we do that?" And he goes, "Well, let's make some crawfish traps." And I was like, "Okay." And I was just a little kid, and so he went and he bought some metal mesh. And back in Bend, you couldn't even find. I mean, you're lucky if you could find a fishing pole and lures back then. I mean, there you couldn't find crawdad traps. But he built some real crude crawfish traps. We went out and we rented a boat, and we went to this reservoir, and we started catching quite a few, and we found out it was pretty easy, and it was really exciting. But then, I went through school, I went to high school, I went off to college, and I kind of forgot about all that. And then, I had a business career, and it brought me to Idaho. I married a wonderful lady, and we moved to Idaho, and we raised our kids. And later, my son, my son's 5 years old. He loves fishing. He loves everything. He didn't like hunting, but he loved fishing, and he was really picky. He would only eat certain things. You could count on one hand, hot dogs, pizza, nachos, that he'd only eat a few things. But in the wilderness, when I'd take him out, if we caught a fish, if we caught something like that, he'd always eat it, and he was really excited about it. Well, we came down, we went to a family reunion over on the Oregon coast, and we went out there, and I remember catching crabs on the coast, and I thought, you know what, I'm going to take him and some of the other kids to the reunion out on the dock, and we're going to catch some Dungeness crab. And so we went out and we did that. My son was about 5 years old, and he's got a form of autism. And it's called Asperger's autism. And what that means to me is he's just a whole lot smarter than the rest of us. He focuses like a laser on things. Well, we got to catching crabs, and if I'd have flown him into Jurassic Park, he couldn't have been more happy. He loved crabbing. And we actually got done with the reunion, and we came back inland about 12 hours back to Idaho. And he couldn't let it go. He was just like, I love to crab. I want to go crabbing. How do you crab? Where can we go? Can we go crabbing? And it was just nonstop. And I'm like, holy cow. I told my wife, I said, man, we just can't travel 12 miles to the coast, or 12 hours to the coast all the time. Yeah. 12 hours to the coast all the time. And he finally, I remembered back to when I was a kid, and I was like, man, I used to catch crawfish. I wonder if there's crawfish in Idaho. And I called Fish and Game. I had no idea what I was doing. I called Fish and Game. This was probably 17, 18 years ago. And I said, are there crawfish in our area? Because my son loves crabbing, and it's kind of similar. And Fish and Game said, oh, yeah, we got huge crawfish here and lots of them, but nobody fishes for them. And I found a couple spots where we could, go find them. And well, it ends up that we bought some traps online, and we went out and we tried to go crawfishing, and we had limited success. We could catch, 2 or 3 crawfish in these, black plastic coated traps. And he was getting a little frustrated. Well, it came down to one night when we were out on this lake, and we had a flashlight, and we were watching crawfish come to the trap. And there was this lobster-sized crawfish, and it came to the trap. And it climbed on the trap. It climbed all over the trap. It was so big it couldn't get into the trap because it was not made for the crawfish we had. And he got so upset. And in the dark, he stood there with his fists clenched. And he's just like, Dad, he goes, you know what we need to do, don't you? And I'm like, well, what? He goes, we need to make our own traps like you and Grandpa did. This stuff doesn't work at all. And I was like, uh-oh, what do we have to do? and so that's really where Crayster started. And he and I went down the road of trying to make crawfish traps. And we thought, if we're going to, let's just scrap everything. Let's just start over. Let's make crawfish traps that can catch big crawfish. Let's make them that are easier to catch. Let's make them that are more durable. And so that winter, he and I, it was like, Zach, do you remember Pinewood Derby?
Yeah. So it was like Pinewood Derby, except for
Pinewood Derby race. What's that?
It was like Pinewood Derby, except with crawdad traps.
Yeah. And we were the only ones racing. It was like nobody wanted to make a better crawfish trap. So he and I, we just sat in the workshop, and we just scrapped everything. We're like, well, if we're going to catch a big crawfish, we're going to catch lots of crawfish. How would we do it? And we had these great father-son moments where we just kind of started making something new and having really good father-son time. Well, when spring came, we went out, and in theory, they were going to work really good because they had these big openings on them. When we made our first traps, they had like these huge openings that flap open and lock them in and everything. And we went out, and we just started catching huge crawfish, and we started catching a lot of crawfish. And he started asking questions about, what's the best color to make our trap? Can we catch them in the day? Can we catch them at night? What's the best bait? And we just went down this father and son road and came up with a lot of discoveries. It was just a lot of fun. And that's kind of how Crayster came to be. The other way Crayster came to be is I had a good hunting buddy and he kept hearing us talk about our crawfishing adventures, and he said he wanted to go. He actually had some world records on some 80s video games, and he had a YouTube channel, and he said, we ought to make a video about you guys and your crawfish traps and how you do it. And he said, and so we went out and we made this little video and we put it on YouTube. And he told us, he said, you're not going to get any views. Your mom might watch it, your sister might watch it. And so we put it up and went to sleep. And the next morning we had hundreds of views and tons of questions. and then the world started getting involved, and it just kind of went from there,
That's the way these things always start. So there's another organization up in Oregon called the Gambler 500. And those guys started the same way. They were just a bunch of friends that bought crappy cars and drove them in the woods. And now they're a worldwide organization that cleans up forests and all kinds of stuff. So you never can tell what's going to be a hot hit.
That's funny you say that. We do a lot of stuff. We do clean up the waterways. Crayster's clean up the waterways, and we go out and we pick up garbage around the rivers and lakes and stuff. And we also do a lot of things for veterans foundations and autism, and we really the group that we've assembled, nationwide and worldwide. It's pretty powerful. There's a lot of great people involved and a lot of good going on.
Well, it's great that you recognize that that your son's being on the autism spectrum wasn't necessarily a bad thing, and you just harnessed that laser focus on, well, let's face it, letting him develop the trap, right?
Yeah, we both developed it. He's doing things I couldn't do. Like he's in electronics engineering in college, and he's got one more year left. I mean, it's just. I felt like he was lucky to have us as parents, and we were really lucky to have him as a kid. I mean, it was as much as I had my career and everything, I literally scheduled in time to go fishing and have family time and things. I think those are the things at the end of your life, you look back and go, why didn't I do more of that? And we just absolutely love getting in the outdoors. I mean, it's just good times. I mean, you don't regret it.
No, never. I've got two young kids, they're 4 and 6, and what you said couldn't be more true. Yeah, it's nice to have money in your bank account or newer cars, nicer things. But in the end, those things all get replaced. And I mean, you can't replace your kids. It's you have that time with them, and once it's gone, that's it.
Yeah, you either have good times or you have lots of regrets. And we all have to work and do things, and I always say there's guilt in parenting, but there can be less guilt. I mean, I literally scheduled. I was like, you know what? I don't care if the whole world falls apart. I'm going fishing Wednesday morning. And that was how we did it.
That's the way to do it. You said you were starting off in Idaho 17 years ago, calling the Division of Wildlife and asking if there's crayfish. Hold on, let's back up. Do you say crayfish or crawdads? Or is that a colloquial
thing? It depends on what region of the country you're from. It's crawdads, crawfish, crayfish, mud bugs. It depends where you're from, and everybody thinks they're right. It's divided in about those 4 parts.
Okay, I'm going to say crawdads. That's what I'm sticking with.
Sounds good. Good.
Were 17 years ago, had they written rules and regs for catching crawdads?
No. There may have been some on the books, but they had no idea. They had no idea about crawfish. They weren't considered, something people ate. There were a few people that did it, but very few. I didn't know any of them. And Fish and Game, when I called them, Jake had all these questions like, how big do crawfish get? And I'm like, I don't know. So I called Fish and Game, and they're like, Idaho Fish and Game were like, Mike, you guys probably know better than we do. That is the only game fish in that we don't keep records on. And there was no limit. You could catch 1 million pounds. Of course, they reproduce. Each female can have 3 to 500 the next year. And so with our waterways, you can't overfish them. There are some places they can be overfished, but there's a lot of places where they go rampant and they get put into waterways they shouldn't be, and they're invasive. And like in Arizona, it is illegal to put back a crawfish if you catch it, because it's, tearing up their waterways. Same with Michigan. There's a lot of places. UK, our big signal crawfish, they've gotten in the waterways over there, and they're destroying their natural species of crawfish and their rivers and their waterways. So it's a very interesting subject. It's a very great way of getting a food source. I mean, people don't even realize that there are 350 species of crawfish in the United States, and there's 5 that are generally consumed. It's going from being known as a bait for bass. The people down in Louisiana, they know, man, you want to have a good time? You go to a crawfish boil. Your friends and family will never forget that. I mean, it's fun when you sit down and you spend a couple hours just talking and sharing and eating. And if you've ever eaten lobster or crab, it's almost the same thing. And we like to get a little garlic butter and dip it in there, and little vitamin B butter.
I never in my wildest dreams would have associated crawdads with northern states. That was one of the things that interested me a whole lot when I first started looking into Crayster. You were focusing on the northwestern part of the United States. So the first one I saw was in Wyoming, then your Idaho. For me, I just always associated them with the South, warmer climates, muddy water. And that's not the case, is it?
No, people are shocked. We have tens of thousands of Facebook people who join our Facebook pages. You can go to Crayster crawfishing and in your state. We've only got 16, but we keep spreading. People don't even realize that, like here in Idaho, they're like, we had no idea that there were millions and millions of crawfish in the Snake River that are about the size of lobsters. And when people get doing it, it's kind of funny, Zach. I always do this funny little impression, but people, when they get involved, don't do this because it gets really addictive. People love catching crawfish and having crawfish boils, especially when they're wild crawfish. But people in our area, they turn into like cavemen and cavewomen. They're like, must catch little lobsters, and they just, man, once they start doing it, they just don't stop. They just start having family time. They realize I go out and I catch a lot of fish, and I catch a lot of nice fish. But the easiest thing is I catch crawfish. We've gone out, and this is going to sound amazing, but we've caught as many as 400 pounds of crawfish in one evening to feed 120 people that flew in from all over the United States. My son and I can go out in an evening and catch easily 100 pounds of crawfish, put them down in our freezer for wintertime so we can eat them all winter long. People don't even realize what a great food source it is, but there are a lot of people that are really realizing there's better ways to catch them. You can't see them from the above, they're running around the bottom, but they're out there and they're all over. From the red swamp to the signal crawfish to the northern or the Varili, to the rusties, they're all over the United States. Almost every single waterway has wild crawfish in it.
So through your research, obviously you and your son probably had to figure out how to dial in where these crawdads are and the best ways to get them. What were you guys looking for when you first started as far as habitat? Like when you walked up to a lake or a reservoir and you looked at it, you go, okay, let's set some pots here because I know there will be crawfish here.
A lot of things we like to look for. We actually have a YouTube channel. You can look up on Crayster on YouTube, and we have the 7 hacks. And one of the hacks is finding good places to go crawfishing. And it's pretty universal wherever you go. When you're looking on a lake, when you have a drainage coming into a lake, usually crawfish will really like that area, or we look for a spot where there's a rocky area right next to a sandy area. And we'll put our crawfish traps down on the sandy area. Well, if you use really good bait, which is one of the hacks, fresh fish is the very best bait. Not hot dogs, not bacon. I know somebody say, oh, my dad used to catch a few on bacon. We've done a lot of research. Fresh fish, a great trap that doesn't look odd to the environment. People use black traps, they use silver traps. Tan is what we found works the best. But if you put it in the right spot, crawfish in a lake will come from 100 yards to come get in your trap. And so they'll come out of rocky areas into sandy areas, and they will just load in. We'll catch 6-8 pounds of crawfish in one trap in 1 hour during the daytime. We've really changed crawfishing. It used to be only a nighttime thing. I go out and catch enough in the daytime. I don't have to go out at night. Sometimes I like to go out at night, especially when there's a full moon, and it's fun to be out on the lake in a full moon. But in rivers, it's like if you can get a slack water where there's like an eddy that comes in, a lot of times there'll be a lot of food in there. Crawfish eat about 80% vegetation, but when they can get really good, like fish, they will come and they'll eat it. And the reasons why they come and eat this fish, they will flock to your trap. I mean, they will come run. And the reasons that do that is because it gives them a lot of fat, nutrients, and things to, make it through the winter and harden their shells and do different things like that. It's really, once you get used to doing it, it's the easiest fishing you can do. And it's some of the most tasty. I don't know Zach, if you've checked out seafood lately, but the cost of seafood is out of control. But it's like Red Lobster for us all the time.
Your traps are really interesting. I want to go and talk about them for a minute. From looking at them,
sure,
it looks like is the bait pocket like suspended in the trap so that crawdads can't just pick at it from the outside of the trap. They actually have to go in.
Yeah, that's right. We invented a better way of crawfishing, and we patented a lot of our processes. We had a relative that looked at, we had made these traps and they were working so good, they said, you should patent them. And we went down that road, and that's a very difficult thing to do. But we had new enough ideas that we were actually able to do that. And that's amazing in this world. But, all of our trap, like this is called a Snake River cylinder. And it's just basically a big cylinder trap made out of 16 gauge steel. And then you can see the bait trap inside. Half the problem with the crawfish traps you buy is people just throw meat at it. There's no bait trap. They eat it from the outside. They're the wrong color. They're black or they're silver. Well, that's okay if you want to go and leave a crawfish trap out all night. But why not have a trap that looks like mud so they're not afraid of it in the daytime? Put good bait in it and catch all you want whenever you want. We don't. A lot of people they are afraid to leave their nice gear out. We leave ours out for an hour and hang out in the sun on the shore and pull them in and get all we want.
That may work for somewhere that has like a huge crawdad population, but like from where I came from, maybe I wasn't looking at the right places, obviously. But our creeks all had smaller crawdads. Maybe, I don't know, if we saw a 3 or 4 inch one, we thought it was a monster. You guys are honest to God catching like little lobsters. They're huge. What goes into making a crawdad that big?
Well, there are, so it's been found out, and we have what are called field researchers nationwide reporting back, and there are big crawdads everywhere, by the way. In a little creek, if it's a little creek and it's a little habitat, you might just get 3 and 4 inch crawdads, and those are going to be big. But I guarantee in the rivers and lakes around those areas, they're probably going to be a lot bigger crawfish. And between the White River crawfish that are found, and the northern crawfish, the signal crawfish, even some red swamp. I have people send me red swamp crawfish. They say they don't get very big, up to 11 inches long, just the red swamp. So if you have the right gear, where we started this all out is if you have the wrong gear, you're going to catch little tiny crawfish because the big crawfish can't get in the entryways. And when we went and we made the gear that big crawfish could get into, we're finding out that there's bigger crawfish than people knew all over the United States. So,
has your work with Crayster influenced any of the fish and game people? Like, are they taking notice of what you're doing as far as studying habitat and studying populations?
Yes, like right now in Arkansas, they actually commissioned to get a bunch of our gear. And they are doing research because they were using crawfish in that state. Their rules were only made for bait, not consumption. And so now with, you know, Crayster's there, and there's a lot of people there that want to eat crawfish. They know how good they are. They know they're little lobsters. They taste delicious. Well, now they're reconsidering all of their laws just based on, you know what, maybe people are going to start eating crawfish and just not using them for bass bait. And I mean, if you go down to Louisiana, they're not using them for bass bait. They're eating them. I mean, you know, and it's funny how it's so confined to that area, yet it's spreading so quick. And, you know, I have a lot of friends that are crawfish farmers down in Louisiana. I've got to meet a lot of people in my lifetime. And their crawfish are great. I mean, they put them out in rice fields. They eat a lot of the natural stuff. Their crawfish are really good. Now, on the flip side of that, when you get wild crawfish, they can get bigger because, you know, sometimes they'll grow for more years. They're really good. Like, there's fresh, clean water where we're from. I know a lot of times they have to purge them because they're out of swamp water and muddy, swampy, kind of stinky water. So they purge them. There's nothing wrong with that. A lot of the areas in the United States have really fresh, clean water. And when you pull them out, you can put them right in a boiling pot. I mean, they are just ready to go. They're clean and very tasty.
We might as well go ahead and talk about some of your favorite ways to eat them, since we're talking about boiling them and such. I noticed on your site you said you don't suck the head stuff out. I don't think
we do sometimes.
Couldn't do it. This seems gross.
Here's the deal. You know, if you've got, you know, like we've got pictures of feeding 100 people and having huge, you know, amounts of crawfish. When you've got that much crawfish, I just prefer to eat the meat. When you're sucking the head, basically what's going on is you get a little bit of stuff inside, but mostly it's the juices that they're boiled in. I mean, you may as well just scoop a cup of juice and just drink that while you're eating your crawfish. To me, it's about the same thing. Some people will disagree with me, but we have, you know, we've even came up with ways to get the meat out of your crawfish super quick. And on YouTube, I show a bit where I take crawfish out of a shell, and people can't even believe it. But you can get the meat out really quick. There's ways of. I once got the meat out of 20 crawfish in 1 minute, and I had a gentleman from TV with the last name of Ramsey that kind of wanted to go up against me with that, but probably wouldn't be a good idea.
Wow. How do you like to cook yours? Do you like to just boil them in water and then eat them?
I do. I like to boil them. I put Zatarain seasoning in them. One of the 7 hacks is a great way to make a crawfish boil. I like to put Zatarain season, and then after we boil them, you boil them for about 5 to 10 minutes, and then we put them in a cooler and we put Creole seasoning on top of it. Shut the cooler, and the Creole seasoning it goes into the taste also. It gives such a wonderful flavor. If anybody out there has not had fresh wild crawfish cooked on a lake in this manner, if you ever do it, you'll want to do it. I mean, it's amazing. People just rave. People are like, I'm not even sure I'm going to like doing this. And then they do it, and they're just hooked. I mean, it's just good times, good friends, great food. And then we also cook corn, and we throw sausage in it, and people put mushrooms and whatever you want, you just throw in there, and then you just dump it on the table. It's like one of those restaurants where they come and dump a bunch of seafood on the table. I mean, what better time can you have than that? You know, especially when you're out on a lake or a river.
Oh, for sure. You were talking about catching a bunch of them and then throwing them in your freezer. Do you have to do anything special to preserve them throughout the winter? Do you have to blanch them slightly, or?
You do. You always want to cook crawfish. Crawfish are not made for crawfish sushi. You cook them because they can have, they can have parasites and different things, and everything does. That's why you cook food in general, But crawfish, especially, you want to cook them. So when I put them down in the freezer, so my family and I can eat them all year long and make all kinds of neat seafood recipes with them, we boil them in the same fashion. A lot of times we'll boil them in the Zatarans, then we'll put them in a cooler, and then we put the Creole seasoning in on top of them, and then we put them in 1 gallon bags, and we put them down like bricks in the freezer. And then whenever we want some, we'll grab some out of the freezer. And then what you do is the big question is not how you make them, it's how you bring them back and have them taste good. And the big key to that is you don't want to reboil them because it makes them tough. but I just put them in hot tap water until they get all unfrozen. And then I just take the meat out and I make the meat into all different kinds of recipes, from crawfish pizza to anything you can use lobster with. On our Facebook pages, we always show some incredible things. People just love the different things we make out of crawfish. But if you can think of anything you can make with lobster, shrimp, or crab, you can make it with fresh crawfish, and it even tastes better. The one thing I like about crawfish is everything tastes better when it's fresher. You know, where I'm an inlander, if I'm gonna get lobster, it's probably been frozen for a long time, and if I sat on a dock, got frozen, got to me, got unthawed, and then it got cooked, it just doesn't taste as good. But when you catch something really fresh, it's a great experience. It just tastes better. Everything tastes better fresh.
For sure. Do you think of crawdad as an invasive species anymore, or has your attitude on them changed a little bit?
Crawfish are definitely now like the signal crawfish that are here. They were not an invasive species. They were actually originally here for tens of thousands of years in Idaho, longer than that. But they were always in our waterways, but they were only in Idaho, Montana, Oregon, and part of Canada. And then they have become invasive all over the world and actually done a lot of damage in waterways. And just like the red swamp crawfish in Michigan are tearing up their waterways. If you go and Google, red swamp crawfish in Michigan, you're going to find out that they're a real problem in waterways. They can make waterways, really muddy, swampy, eat everything from all the vegetation, all the natural fish, snails, the other crawfish. They can destroy. Same thing with Arizona. Crawfish are a wonderful gift. I love them, but they shouldn't get in waterways that they don't belong in, because they can cause a lot of damage.
Do they? My train of thought here. So the big thing is they wreck the habitat. They just eat all the vegetation, and there go the smaller fish don't have anything to eat, and the bigger fish don't have anything to eat, and so on and so forth.
Kind of. We went up. It can now if they're originally in the waters. In the UK, they thought, these big signal crawfish like they have in Idaho and Oregon and Montana would be great to have here. Well, they moved them in, and then they started destroying other waterways and became a big problem. We went up to Arizona, what was called Crayster Camp, and we went up there and we helped clean out a creek called East Clear Creek. We went up, a whole bunch of Crayster people met there, had a wonderful weekend, and we caught as many crawfish out of these creeks, these invasive crawfish out of the creek, and we just made huge boils and had a great time because they were actually killing a lot of their native species of fish and minnows that were in that creek. And I think crawfish are like everything, they could be a blessing or a curse. If you have crawfish or you have crawfish brought in, a lot of places have big laws about not transporting wild crawfish, because all you need to do is accidentally let a couple go down a storm cellar or out in another creek or something, and it can cause quite a problem. When you talk a female can has to have 300 to 500 babies every year, they can kind of take over an ecosystem pretty quick if they're not supposed to be in there.
Do you know how long it takes a crawdad to reach sexual maturity, when they can start breeding?
Usually about 2 to 3 years, from what I understand. It's not very long. Crawfish. A lot of your crawfish in ponds and things. In Louisiana, they usually live from 2 to 3 years, and then they're harvested. A lot of your other species of wild crawfish can live up to 20 years and even longer. And they're just like lobsters in the ocean. They'll keep growing as long as they live. They've got 3-foot long, 100-pound lobsters because they've lived so long. And it seems like our signal crawfish and the long pinchered crawfish at Arkansas, the rusties even, I've seen huge ones. The longer they live, it seems like the bigger they get.
Are they any better or worse to eat as they get bigger?
No, they're always good. They're always tender, they're always fresh, and they're always good. I've been asked that question. I've never had a crawfish that I didn't like. They
That's
don't get any
interesting.
tougher. The meat and the claws and the tail meat just gets bigger.
That's interesting because some game species, maybe it's just the stigma, but they don't want the big old gnarly buck. Maybe that's mature and he's big and huge. Like that's a shooter buck. You don't want to eat that buck. And I always thought it was the same way with shellfish because my dad always told me that you don't want a big huge lobster because they're tough. But maybe that's just wrong. Maybe that's just in the preparation and the cooking.
Do you know, I've found, like my mother-in-law said, I don't like venison. She owns a cattle ranch. And she said, I hate venison. I don't like venison. I'll never like venison. I said, well, come on over. I'll fix you some venison. And if you don't like it, I'll fix you a beefsteak from out of your ranch. And she goes, I'm going to hate it. She came over and I bacon wrapped it and I smoked it with applewood smoke. And she cut into it. And when she put it in her mouth, she said, this isn't venison, Mike. This is, you're lying to me. This is heavenly. And I said, it's just venison that's been well taken care of. I think a lot of it's in the preparation. There can be a big old nasty buck I don't want to eat, but I find that a lot of times in the cooking, in the preparation, can make a difference in a lot of cases.
And if you're preparing them for taxidermy, how does that work? Because I've never seen someone so proud of a crawdad that they wanted to mount it.
There's people all over doing it now. We started something funny. We just take the meat out of the insides, and then we just position them, and the shell hardens, and then we spray lacquer on them, and we take them to our trade shows. People are like, there aren't crawfish this big. Like, well, look, there's taxidermy crawfish right there. Holy cow, look at this. Where'd you get those? Right outside of town here. I mean, there are a lot of big crawfish everywhere. You just got to get the equipment to catch them.
That's interesting. So your outreach has been the seems like the spreading of Crayster is a little bit odd. Has it all just been online, or did you go to like trade shows and fishing expos with your traps and show people that this resource is in their back door?
99% of it's been online. We started with our YouTube channel, and people were so interested and they loved it. We've got millions of views on those channels. Our Facebook took off. The reason we go do trade shows now, we sell so much of our gear online that we sell out on a regular basis. Last summer we sold out 4 times. We keep growing and getting bigger, and our gear's getting so popular. But the kicker is we go do trade shows now because fans want to come meet us, and they shake our hands and take pictures. It's from being that dad on the lake, with the little kid saying, hey, I want to make my own trap, to all of a sudden having people want to take a picture with me, and tell me, you know what? I really appreciate you. I didn't know there was crawfishing. My whole family's into it now. I can't thank you enough. We love this. We love your gear. We love our one thing I want to tell you, one way that we really got popular. I have people tell me this all the time, especially on our Facebook pages. They said, there's a lot of fishing pages and everybody wants to one-up everybody, and everybody's nasty to everybody, and everybody seems to want to argue. Our pages, one thing that we have kind of like entry rules, it's like everybody has to be friendly to everybody. We share information openly, and we're all friends here. And so people, they rave all the time, like, I can't believe I met a friend. I go fishing with my new friend, or I learned information, or how to cook this or that. We have our Facebook pages are exploding just because it's a different thing. I mean, in this world of politics and, people want to always be right, we just built a giant community of good friends, and that's what it's all about. I mean, we go out and we do just wonderful things in the community. We like to fish, like you said, you can make all the money you want. You can't take it with you. But, if a guy can make enough friends in a lifetime, that's kind of what it's all about,
And I think the thing that enables that with Crayster is especially the competition part. So you look at a crawdad, then it's, unless you have like a monster 11 or 12-inch crawdad, it's not record setting or anything, and they reproduce so fast. Whereas if you're fishing for, say, like a record muskie, they're so hard to catch that you don't want to give up that little bit of information. But with something like a crawdad, it's like, yeah, just go throw your traps out somewhere where the rock meets the sand and you're going to catch crawfish.
Yeah. And one thing, I think another reason that we're successful is there's we started with just good information. When YouTube went out and people are asking questions, what's the best bait and what's the best ideas, we freely gave information. It went years and years and years, and that's all we did, and that's all we were. And then we actually did, with our patented gear, we started a company, but we found out there's 3 different kind of people out there, and we're okay with all 3 of them. One, they just want to eat crawfish. They don't want to catch them. And there's nothing wrong with that, because crawfish are good to eat. Okay. There's other people that want to build their own traps and try to go out and catch them with their own traps. And we fully support that. People on our Facebook page say, what do you think of this trap? Add a central bait trap, color it. And they're like, well, thanks so much. And then there are a third of the people that they don't want to goof around making traps, and they want to go catch them, and they want the best gear in the world. Not only do they want the best gear in the world, we could have went to China to make our gear, and we didn't. We stood, we really stood by our morals, and our fundamentals were, if we can't make it in the United States, we're just not going to make it. And we actually do our own manufacturing. We have a wonderful gentleman named Jerry that's part of our team. We've got a lot of team members, and he runs manufacturing. We don't cut corners. We have the world's most expensive crawfish gear. It's not made in China. We don't use child labor. We're paying American wages. We have all of our parts sourced here. We do the assembly, and then we go on and put really expensive powder coating in 550-pound line. Nobody does that, and no other company goes and gives so much good advice. And so we've done so well. I've got a wonderful gentleman named Nathan Hawks. He built our website. He does a lot of stuff for our advertising. And he said, one thing I love that he says, he goes, you guys are just a bunch of cool guys, and you just by chance sell some crawfish gear. And I'm like, yeah, we don't push it. We don't advertise. We don't need to, it's just kind of like a phenomenon that's going out there. If you want a good American made product, it's kind of like our gear, 80% of what we do is free. We give good advice. We communicate with people, and then we did invent some really great crawfishing gear. If you want good stuff made in the United States, it's kind of like somebody said, well, how do you know your stuff's better? I said, well, I know because I had to test it, and in our patent we had to prove our claim that they work 3 to 10 times better than any crawfish trap on the market. And so we actually went out and did that. And when you get a patent, there's no joke. You have to prove what your statement is, and we were able to do that, which was very difficult. But people a lot of times they vote with their dollars, and if they can buy something for $19.99 that's made out of plastic in China, then that's that's fine. But I know you've gone hunting, and it's to me saying to you, hey, you know what? Try going hunting with a dart gun with a Nerf tip on it. I mean, gear really makes a difference. Bait makes a difference. Kind of research in your own spot. It makes a difference. And nobody's going to do that for you. But when you get good at it, man, you can have crawfish for life, for sure.
I think people are finally starting to come around to a lot of the things you just mentioned. The quality of something that you use can enhance the experience. So when I first started hunting, I didn't know anything about warm base layers, the proper socks, the most basic of things that make your experience at least partially enjoyable. And after a couple of experiences out here in the Rocky Mountain West, it's like, okay, I am not in Southern Ohio anymore, just walking cornfields and stuff. I have got to get some better stuff. And it makes such a huge difference.
It really does. And I see people all the time. They're like, well, I wanted to get into crawfishing, but I bought those plastic ones and I spent $50 in gas and we got 4. And I remember when my son and I had a funny story. You want a funny story?
Sure. Fire it up.
Okay. My son and I, when we started testing our traps, we took 6 traps out to the lake, and my wife, she knew we were really having fun with this. She let us buy a boat. We went out on the lake, And my son and I were going down the lakeshore, and we're going to this remote dock. We're just going to park there and throw our crawfish traps off the dock and just sit in the sun. He had his Red Ryder BB gun. He was going to try to shoot water skippers. Just good family, good father-son time. Well, so we go out this dock and we throw our traps off, and we're just sitting there. And we were there for about 2 hours. We have this thing that's called a creature catcher, and it's what we call it, but it's actually a creature keeper. When we catch crawdads, we put it in this thing, and we're loading it up, and it's probably got 50 pounds of crawfish in it after about 2 hours. And on the way out there, I was noticing all this garbage in the water, and I was telling my son, I said, look at all these water bottles. What are all these water bottles doing? On the way back in, let's pick them up, because we're usually picking up garbage if we see it. And he's like, okay, So we go out there and we put them in. Then all of a sudden, this boat comes, and this boat comes in, and we realize they've got it's one of those pontoon boats, and there's 2 elderly gentlemen in it, and they've got this big hook, and they're hooking these water bottles. Well, it ends up they have these little black cylinder traps. You can only legally have 5 per person with a fishing license in our state, and they've got 50 of these. I mean, they have so many of them, and they're catching 1 to 3 crawfish, and they left their traps out all night long. And so they actually are going around. We discovered what they're doing. Oh my gosh, they're crawfishing, And so they actually pulled up to our dock, and they said, "Hey, what are you guys doing?" And we said, "Oh, we're crawfishing." And they said, "Oh, so are we." They said, "Do you boys want to see a bunch of crawfish?" And we're like, "Sure." And so they come over, and they had this cooler, and they open it up, and they had about 35 crawfish on ice. And my son, the way he is, he just shrugged his shoulders and goes, and he goes walking off their boat. And they're like, okay, whatever. And he looks back at me and goes, "Dad, do you want to show them our crawfish?" And I'm like, if they want to see, like, "Oh yeah, we'll take a look." And he pulls up 50 pounds of crawfish and puts them on the dock next to him, and their eyes are just huge. And they're like, "How did you catch that many? Have you been out all night?" And I was like, "Something like that." And then they looked at our trap, and they said, "Oh yeah, we've used square traps. Those don't work very good." And we're like, "Well, have a nice day." And they left. And my son still tells that story. He's like, takes 50 traps to catch what 6 of ours catch. And it's just good times,
That's funny. You gotta love that. Just the blunt, like, get out of here, guys. Those are rookie numbers.
Yeah, that was back in the day before we, really shared everything with everybody. It was pretty fun.
That's funny. So what are your plans for Crayster? Where are you thinking it's going to go?
Do we don't even know. We've had invitations to do some TV stuff. We've had all kinds of people contacted us, like yourself. We really love to get out and try to stir it up, see if we can get people having good family time. Our Facebook pages are exploding. YouTube's always been fun. I really don't know. More and more people are joining all the time. We have four of us that are really core members that are really doing it. But now we're getting all the Facebook pages, and we're getting local moderators in all the states. And so it's kind of an entity that's growing on its own. I think we're just going to build a really great, nice community. For instance, like in Oregon, I've never met, in Washington, I've never met the state moderator for our Crayster page, and he's got over 5,000 members in a year, and it's really exciting. In June, we're driving out there just to meet him, and there's probably going to be 100 people that are going to meet in Oregon and Washington. And there are people coming from California and all over the country. For us right now, it's just fun time. Getting out, meeting people, having boils. Getting people. Hopefully, probably the thing that I like the most. I don't know if this is where we're going, but I don't get paid. Everything that's made gets put back in for community service, getting bigger, the whole 9 yards. But the thing I like the most is when I see on Facebook a dad and a kid, sitting there with crawfish up with the biggest smiles in the world on them. And I love that. We've made children's gear because, there's so many dads that get little boys. Like we made, we have a bunch of special little girls. And so we made a pink trap. And we've had more We have had more dads give these to their little girls and do unboxing and put them up on our Facebook pages, and then go out and catch crawfish and make videos and post them. And to me, that's the biggest pay, is just watching people enjoy the community more than anything.
Well, that's fun. I would never would have thought that something as innocuous as a crawdad could really bring people together that much and give them that much joy. I just never thought of it.
Go down to Louisiana and tell them that. They'll throw you out of the state.
Yeah, you're probably right.
Seriously. Yeah, I mean, down there it's like in the fabric, and there's so many places now that people are doing it, catching wild, because they just didn't know they're out there. And now that they're discovering them and finding them and getting on the Facebook pages, and people are saying, yeah, try this lake, try this river. I had a lot of success here. I had a lot of success there. It's becoming easier to find them and enjoy them.
For people that want to, I know we barely scratched the surface of all the experience that you've had with crawdads. Your website, crayster.com, you guys
Correct.
have a lot of
Yes.
information on there.
We do.
Yep, everything from the hacks you've mentioned to recipes. I mean, all that stuff.
Yeah, we do. That's one thing we really enjoy, is sharing information, and we've got a lot of people sharing information. I could never have done all this myself. It kind of grew from my son and I. And then, we took on a couple of partners, and now there's just people that love it so much. They moderate, and there's so much good information. And what's funny is it is to me, before I got into this, I've been like, yeah, crawdads are cool, crawfish are good to eat, but we're building a community of friends, and we don't just like to crawfish. I hunt, I fish, I do a lot of things outdoor. I do share my crawfishing the most, and we've made a lot of really fun videos. I love sharing experiences. We went to an island on the Snake River, and we had never been there before, and we just caught full traps. We called it, Adventure to Crawdad Island. There's a lot of fun videos. I have a buddy that joined our team in California. His name is Doug MacArthur, and he puts together all of our Facebook pages. And he said, I don't know how you did it. He goes, you could only throw in a crawdad trap and pull it out so many times and make it interesting. But we make a lot of fun adventures out of our videos, and a lot of people like to follow and watch. And not only, we make them kind of campy, like the video we put out yesterday where the little kids got their traps stolen, and we showed up and we gave them new gear. There's a lot of things we do just because we can, and it's very rewarding to us just to be doing that.
Let's talk about that a minute. Is theft of crawdad pots like a bad thing? Is it pretty common?
It is. It's funny, if you go to Maine and you steal lobster pots, because people steal lobster pots, they've got laws, like you can get shot. I mean, they're like really serious about it. There are a lot of people that get their crawfishing gear stolen, and it's kind of interesting. We made gear that you could fish with in the day and hang out, so they didn't have to get stolen. But most people do the old school thing where they throw it in all night long. Well, they'll go down and they'll take a bunch of gear and they'll throw it in the local watering hole with everybody watching. They'll go away for 2 days and come back and expect it to be there. If you throw a lot of it, it's like kind of like if you left your deer rifle leaning up against a tree and then you went to town for 3 days, is your deer rifle going to be there when you get back? Probably not. And so, with it getting more and more popular, we actually, one of our hacks, hack number 7 is how not to get your crawfish traps stolen. When it's early in the season, you do have to put the crawfish traps down longer and sometimes overnight to catch a punch. In the summer, you catch all you want really quick. They're really active. But we've come up with that hack, shows you how to hide your lines, how not. I've only had one crawfish trap stolen, and I intended to get it stolen. I didn't think it would. I told my buddies that I'm going to buoy this up, leave it right here in the middle of the lake, and we're going to go to the other end of the lake for 3 hours. And when we came back, it was gone. I put a $100 reward out and really shook up everything. I said, I'll give a $100 reward and free crawfish traps for anybody who can lead me to who stole my crawfish trap. And I put it on Facebook and everything. And this gentleman called me and goes, I didn't steal it, but I have it. I'll get it back to you. Oh my gosh, call off the dogs. And I'm like, it was hilarious. But when I hide my traps, when I set my traps, well, nobody ever even knows they're there. We use camo line. It's the hard part is putting your traps out and then remembering where you put them, because we hide them so well. Sometimes we have a hard time finding them. but there's really an art to it. You don't want to leave your expensive stuff laying around.
That's funny. Do you guys have plenty of traps in stock right now?
We do. We went from 4 people on our staff to 12, and off season we filled our warehouses full of traps. We anticipate running out by June or July. We always run out. We can't keep them in stock. People are learning really quick that, the way you have good success is having good gear. You can also make good gear. I mean, just, you can look at ours online and stuff, and although we have a patent, you can't resell our, but you can make anything you want for your personal use. And if you're handy and you can make them, that's the way we started. And we support everybody and everything in crawfishing. So anybody has questions, we're always willing to answer. By the time you buy all the stuff and the tools and the things and try to powder coat it, usually you're backwards anyways. So it's
for anyone that has any more questions.
There is some,
what's the best way to get a hold of you?
Making your own sometimes too.
For sure.
You can get it. You can get a hold of me on any of our Facebook pages, on YouTube, on Crayster on YouTube. Those are probably the very best ways to get a hold of us. On Crayster, there is a email page there that they can get a hold of me or anybody on my staff.
Well, I got to tell you, I'm super glad that you guys are sharing your little stories and stuff. I find it fascinating, and if there's not a Colorado Crayster, I may have to start one.
There is one.
I'll join it anyway.
Colorado
I don't care.
Crayster reports. Yeah, man, we've already got one. There's already one there.
That's all right. I'm going to go out and start
doing. We've made 2 videos out of Colorado also, showing you how to catch the crawfish that are there. They're the northern crawfish, or the species you have there in Colorado, and they are delicious.
I'm going to go out and okay, so before June, I guess I'm going to have to get on procrayster.com and order some traps, because I'm not making them. You guys have already done all the work.
Right on.
I'm going to have me a low country broil.
Sounds good. Yeah, you'll really enjoy it. Be careful. It's a little bit addicting. It's really fun. Enjoy, friends. And then here's the big thing. Here's one thing we do too. We make it mandatory to crawfish boil that all the cell phones get shut off. And when the cell phones get shut off, you won't believe the conversations that start. The only time a cell phone comes out is when somebody wants to take a picture. And try that little secret too. You'll have more fun than a bunch of people should be allowed to have.
Isn't technology something? It's made our lives so much better, but in a lot of ways, it's divided us even further.
Yeah, you just got to make up some rules. It's like if everybody agrees to turn the cell phones off, when you're not looking at the video screen and you're looking at each other. I watch people, I've had truckers and bikers sitting next to little kids laughing and giggling and eating and having fun. And it's really interesting when you turn off the technology. Half the time when we do our Crayster Days boils, we'll invite 100 people, and we will have it somewhere where there's no cell phone reception. So we kind of cancel that out. And you won't believe, people rave about it online, about just the experience and how great strangers were to them and how much it meant to them.
That's amazing, man. Mike, I've got to go pick up some kids from school here in a minute, and I hate to stop talking to you, because like you said, we could probably talk for hours about crawdads.
For sure. It was a pleasure talking to you, Zach, and I enjoy your podcast also, Zach. Good luck, and keep up the good work. Keep bringing sportsmen together.
Thank you, sir. I appreciate that.
Thank you. Have a great day.
Yeah, you too, Mike.